Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Bryndís, and today we are doing the mid-year freakout tag. I cannot really say that I'm very freaked out, but it's fine. It's a fun tag, and it's good, I think, to take stock of how things are going. And for me, at least, I'm definitely a goal-setting type of a person, so it's fun to just go through my goals and where I'm at for the month. So I have no idea who actually created this tag. I just seen it going around BookTube. Everybody seems to be doing it. And of course, that's why I wanted to do it as well. So now that we are basically done with June, I'm filming this a couple of days before you see it on the 1st of July, but more or less, I kind of know how June has gone. So we're done with 6 months of the year. We have 6 more months to go. And I'm just gonna go through how things have been going for me. There are, I think, 13 kind of questions or prompts that I'm gonna go through. So let's just start with prompt number 1, which is best book of the year so far. I have read so many good books this year so far. I think I've had like around 20, just over 20 5-stars. Now I'm not super strict in my 5 stars for sure, but I don't give a book a 5-star just because it's a good book. So there are some really good books there, and I had to really grapple with what book is like my favorite. And none of the books have really knocked this one off the first place. This is the first book I read this year. It was my favorite book in the first quarter crisis video. And I compare everything that I read to Jane Eyre. It did something to me when I read it. And I don't know if I ever gonna read it again, because I'm afraid it won't live up to its own hype in my mind. But so far, at least, it is the favorite book that I've read this year. Prompt number 2, best sequel you read so far in 2024. I am currently reading through 3 series. My favorite would definitely be Iron Gold, the 4th book in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. I've enjoyed all of the books, but I think this might have been my favorite so far, number 4. I mean, it is so good. It is so good. Yeah, I'm like savoring books number 6 and then waiting very impatiently for book number 7, the last one, because it's gonna be so sad when I'm done with the series. I'm definitely going to be rereading it. It's so good. The audiobook is so well done, and the world building, the character. I know that this series is very hyped up, but in my opinion, it's hyped up because it is really good. It's not like, it deserves to be hyped up. It's so good. And book number 4, so good. Number 3, new releases you haven't read but want to. I don't pay any attention to new releases. I have so many backlisted books that I need to read. I'm also reading a lot of classics. So I don't follow at all new books, except obviously sometimes they come up here on BookTube, and then I'm like, oh, everybody's talking about this book. It sounds very interesting. But I probably wouldn't notice. But in February, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of the Fairies, and I do know that the second book, I think it's going to be a trilogy. The second book has been published. and I haven't got it as an audiobook, so I'm just waiting very impatiently for it to come out here in Iceland, be available here in Iceland as a paperback. Yeah, so I'm definitely waiting. It's been published, but I don't know if it's been published as a paperback yet, at least not here in Iceland. So as soon as that one is available for me, I'm definitely going to be buying it. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Like I said, I don't really follow new releases simply because I'm reading a lot of classics. I've begun to read some fantasy, Nobel Prize winners or whatever, so none of them are really new. Most of the fantasy that I'm reading is, backlisted. Like I have a lot to catch up. So the books that I'm looking forward to for this year, or the new books in a series that I'm looking forward to, is the 10th book in the Outlander series. But that one may not come out until 2025 or even 2026. So probably not this year. And also the 7th book in the Red Rising series, I saw somewhere that it would be published in November of 2024. But I also seen that there is the author himself doesn't even know when it's gonna be ready. So I don't really know. Number 5, biggest disappointment. So for this question or prompt, I don't really have one book, because my biggest disappointment of the year so far has been Charlotte Bronte. And I know you're like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, this is my favorite book. I love this book. I love everything about this book. I love Charlotte Bronte's writing. I actually love her writing style in all of her books. But my mistake was that I started with Jane Eyre. If you are going to read Charlotte Bronte and you have not read anything by her and you are interested in reading her 4 novels, leave Jane Eyre to the last, as the last book. Start with the other 3. I think because I was so taken with this book, and it just kind of has planted itself into my soul. Really, it really has. These books really didn't have a chance. Now, I enjoyed all of them. Shirley, I think, was really good. It's such a great story about the social situation in England at the time, and the changes that the Industrial Revolution made into society, influenced into society, and the impact it has on just the individual person. And I don't think we often think about how progress, which is usually for the best or for the better of humankind, it can be very hard for the people within the situation, because of industrialization meant that they were starting to use machines to do things that people used to do, so the people lost their jobs and starved. So obviously it's horrible for those people. And I think that, and there was a lot of criticism or discussion in Victorian England about who had the responsibility of kind of taking care of people who didn't have jobs because they lost their jobs because of, something like this. And so I think she's addressing that really well. And I think if you're interested in kind of social history, I think this is just like the perfect book for that. And there's also a really lovely kind of female friendship between Shirley and Catherine. There is, of course, a love story. You have to have that as well. And kind of some hilarious moments there. Charlotte Bronte was actually quite funny. And I also think that in Villette, there are some of the parts in Villette are just magnificent. But then there are other parts that are just horrifying and very difficult for someone in the 21st century to read. The Professor, I thought was also, to a degree, very interesting, and I enjoyed a lot of this book. But as a whole, I was expecting more or better. And therefore, I was disappointed because, read Jane Eyre, the last of the 4, if you want to read all of them. That's my recommendation. But, yeah. Number 6, biggest surprise. I have to say that for me, the biggest surprise is The Shining by Stephen King. I have been so afraid to read this book. I started it 2 years ago and I gave up after the first chapter. And this time around, I'm reading it and I was reading it, and I'm not going to say much because I have a video coming up next week probably with me reading it, my reactions and kind of reflections on the book. But it's hella scary. Don't get me wrong. But it's so much more than just scary horror. It's not like Jane Eyre in regards to writing, but it's still done really well, I think. I'm not like overly critical of the writing style or anything, but I think that Stephen King, I think he writes the relationship between the husband and wife really well, and I think he writes Danny, the son, so well. And there are just things in this book that I hadn't, because I've seen the movie, and the movie is the reason for why it's been so hard for me to read this book, because the movie is so horribly scary. Jack Nicholson, like as Jack, he's so good. And I saw the movie when I was too young and it traumatized me, and I'm a scaredy cat and all those things. So but I want to read all or most of Stephen King's books. So I've been trying, so anyway, I read the book and I was so pleasantly surprised by so many things in this book. So please go watch, wait for next week's video when I talk about it, because it was a lovely surprise, for sure. Number 7, new favorite author. And this can be a debut author or new to me author. And I have to say that would be Madeline Miller. I also read Galatea as an audiobook, and I need to get that one as a hard copy for sure, or physical copy, because Madeline Miller's writing is just up my alley. The storyline as well in both of these books is so good. Her kind of way of telling the story, her description or infusion of emotions into her writing, it's so good. And I cannot wait for the next book that I think is on Persephone, which I think is coming out. Actually, it could be an anticipated release. I don't know if it's been announced, if it's this year or if it's going to be next year. But I'm definitely going to be reading that, and I want to own all of her books because I think she is absolutely a fantastic author. Number 8 is newest fictional crush. I have never had any fictional crush that has been able to take the place of Mr. Darcy. But obviously he's not new. I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time when I was in my early 20s, and since then, for almost 30 years, there has been no one else. I'm very monogamous like that. But if I have to look at the books that I've read, now I'm assuming that we are talking about crush as in a romantic partner, someone that you are romantically interested in, and but none of the male people in the books that I've read have necessarily been super someone that you would necessarily want to build a life with, to be honest. Maybe spend the night with, I don't know, but not properly, for sure. But Darrow in the Red Rising saga, I think, is a very interesting character. He's definitely very loyal, very passionate, and very kind of a go-getter for sure, but he's very violent as well. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. So to be honest with you, when I thought about this, I just thought I would just skip it because, like I said, it's just Mr. Darcy who my heart belongs to. But I actually think that Piranesi and I could get along very well. We could have a really good relationship because we could just sit there and talk about the world, on philosophize about things, and I like seaweed. Number 9, newest favorite character. For me, I mean, there have been a lot of really strong, good characters that I've read in the last 6 months, and of course, Jane Eyre is in the top there. But actually, if I'm thinking about a character that is just so complex and interesting to me, I actually think I'm gonna say Layathi from The Empire of the Damned. So she's a vampire, and that's really all I'm going to say about it because I don't want to spoil anything. But she's a vampire, and the vampires in this world are horrific and perfect vampires, in my opinion. But she is just more. She's just this insane vampire, but like with a twist. Like not like she's a very good. She's built very well as a vampire, and like you have to just read the books to really get I think to what I'm saying. But Layathi is just really good. Number 10 is a book that made you cry, or books that made you cry. I'm just going to talk about this one book. A lot of books make me cry. If a book not making me cry is the exception, I would say. I just cry very easily. I'm a very sensitive person, and I'm in perimenopause, and I'm not going to say any more about that, but I cry about everything. But a book that really made me cry and just was quite devastating. It was somewhat triggering to me, but not necessarily, I think also in a healing way. And that is Dubliners by James Joyce. There's a story, there are a couple of short stories in there that are just... The one that is just absolutely devastating is it a Heart Case? No. I can never remember what it's called. You see? A Painful Case. It's about loneliness, lost love, suicide. So it's definitely some really heavy topics. And I sobbed as I read it, but in a good way. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but sometimes it's good to cry. And I think that I'm going to be reading that story like over and over again because it just really just sat with me. Okay, just a couple of more of these. Number 11, books that made you happy. So obviously Piranesi is one of those books for sure. It was such a, I mean, it wasn't a surprise. I knew everybody was raving about this book, but it was so fun, well written, such an interesting premise. Everything about it made me happy. But actually the book that has made me the most happy this year so far has been this one. The Queen of Dirt Island by Donal Ryan, I think it's said. This is an Irish book, and the writing style in this book is divine. It is so beautiful. It is, and you can just also, it's so nice when I'm reading it, because I read the physical book, I can just hear the sing-song Irish accent and the relationship between two of the characters there, their friendship, intergenerational relationship. definitely recommend this book if you want just I mean, there are sad parts in it, and it's like emotional, but it's just so good, and also just so it's like a deep sigh. It's a good book. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I have bought so many books this year, and I actually think that this might be my most beautiful one. I bought it only because of the cover. It's green, it's my favorite color, and my favorite shade of green. And I really enjoyed this book. I think I enjoyed it to a large degree because the fairy and the location is very much based on Iceland and Icelandic elves, or the hidden people. And I really enjoyed that. But I also just enjoyed the writing. I want to read the sequel, as I said before, for sure. But this cover is so beautiful. And then the last one is 13. What books do you want to read by the end of the year? I think the book that's going to be on the top of that list of books that I want to read is actually Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. And I think there are several reasons for why I want to read this. I think that it's very interesting premise of an actress in a Shakespeare play. Another thing that's super interesting about it also is that it takes place in Palestine. And of course, with the horrific genocide going on in Palestine at the moment, and I would really just like to read something that takes place in Palestine and just kind of maybe get to know some of the people in this book that are Palestinians and stuff like that. I think that this one was also shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It's gotten rave reviews, and it's a book that I definitely want to read. So that's that, the mid-year book freakout tag. And I've just had such a great reading year so far. I think I've read around over 60 books, and lots of them 5-star, many more of them 4 stars, a couple of dots, but for the most part it's just been such a fantastic year for me so far. And I hope obviously that the remainder of the year will be just as good. It will be interesting to check back in after 3 more months. I'm assuming there's going to be like the last quarter year panic tag or something, whatever it's called. And it will be fun to see if some of the things that I've talked about has changed. But anyway, I hope that you are doing well. Let's have a chat in the comments if you have read any of these books or interested in any of them. And we'll see you in my next one. Bye.